Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Continuing with the lecture series on traumatology or the mechanical injuries. This is the third lecture, and the learning objective of this lecture will be that we will learn what are various physical laws which are related with the wound production. And as we know, as a result of every response, there is a counter response. So the two main important factors those are the tissue and the force. So we will discuss in this what are the physical laws which are related with the wound production. They are the laws of motion, laws of elasticity, laws of conservation of energy, and Hooke's law of elasticity. Then we will learn the role of force in the wound production. That is the application of force, amount of force, and velocity of force. So we'll start with the lecture number 3. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Starting the lecture number 3. And in this lecture, I will discuss the physical laws related with the wound production. So the first factor is the application of force. These are the components of trauma, and the first factor is the application of force. There is always a response and a counter response, we know. And the response is the force which is applied in the wound production, and counter response is the resultant wound. So it's the interaction between tissue and the force. And the laws which govern the wound production are the laws of motion, laws of elasticity, laws of conservation of energy, and Hooke's law. When a force is applied to a mass, the mass will react in two ways. Either it will resist the force, and this resistance is due to the elastic properties of the mass. That is the elastic properties of the tissues, which will try to resist the force. The mass will try to adapt the force and absorb the energy, resulting in distortion. Similarly, the human body, as we know, it is not uniformly structured as any object, solid object. So it consists of tissues, various tissues, and tissues are made up of cells which are arranged in a specific order. We know that. And whenever a force is applied to the human body tissues, its constituent cellular elements are set into motion, and they are displaced from their original position. With this movement, the elastic force arises within the tissues, which try to bring back the cells to their original position under the laws of elasticity. So the laws of elasticity are, it states that the amount of force required to return a distorted mass back to its original position is directly proportional to the amount of distortion. And when a force exceeds the elastic limits of the tissues, it disrupts a part. So when the force of impact exceeds the capacity of the tissues to resist or adopt the tissues, they are torn and wound is produced. And this is the Hooke's law. Now regarding the amount of force. The amount of force in causation of wound is very important. For example, a stick is thrown at a same site on the body with little force, only there will be erythema. And if we increase the force, it will cause a lacerated wound. With further increase in the force, it will cause crushing of the tissues and even the fracture of the bone underneath. So with the same weapon and same site, just by increasing the force, the appearance of wound is changed. Now the velocity factor. When an object is moving at a definite speed, having a mass, and will have a definite force or energy, and it is represented as we know, the law of physics that force is directly proportional to half the mass and square root of the velocity. So it means if we double the mass, the force will be doubled. But if we double the velocity, the force will be 4 times. So that's why a bullet manifests a tremendous amount of damage instead of a brick. Brick having the more mass but will strike at low velocity, whereas the bullet having a small mass striking at high speed will cause more damage. So the summary of this lecture is that we have learned that various physical laws are related with the wound production, and as there is always a response and a counter response, and we have learned that the two components, that the tissue and force, are the most important components. And we have also learned what physical laws which are applicable. They are laws of motion, laws of elasticity, laws of conservation of energy, and Hooke's law. And in the mechanism of wound production, there is always application of force, then the amount of force, and the velocity of force. So these factors we have understood and learned in this lecture. Thank you very much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.